Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Committee of the Whole meeting for November 10th, 2022. We'll start off with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the traditional lands of Acadia First Nations, part of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Item number 3, Remembrance Day acknowledgement. Could we all please stand for a moment of silence in regards to all those who fought and served in all the world wars to make sure that we all have the freedom to do what we do today. Thank you very much, everyone. Please remember to thank a veteran, and on behalf of the council, staff, and the residents of the municipality, thank you to all those who serve and defend our freedoms. Item number 4, additions and deletions to the agenda. I have one deletion to the agenda. It's item number 8 under old business, the boundary review final report regarding C&D design. Unfortunately, Caroline and Derek both are sick. They notified us this morning, so could I have a motion to delete that from the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion to delete that from the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Also, another thing, could we please add under new business, boundary review final report, pardon me? Yeah, special meeting. Could I have a motion to add that to the agenda under new business, item 9.6? Moved by Councillor Patty Durkee, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Is there any more additions or deletions to the agenda circulated? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Patty Durkee, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 6, declarations of conflict of interest. If any of you have any during any of the presentations or different things that are on here, please notify me, and it will be noted in the meeting minutes. Item number 7, presentations. We have with us today Mr. Derek Thompson on regards to the Harbor Authority of Port Maitland, and I must say that I really enjoy seeing your shirt. His t-shirt says Port Maitland on that. I'm going to turn on your microphone, and council eagerly awaits your presentation.
Okay, thank you, councillors, and all the other people that have given me the floor here to share our thoughts on what we need to do with Port Maitland. And again, to introduce myself, I am a fisherman out of Port Maitland, Derek Thomas, and over the last couple of years we've had a lot of people, our boats leave our harbor, so with this exodus we feel that we are a dying harbor and we have to come up with a new strategy to save the existence of the harbor. So with that, we'll move forward. Just in case there's somebody who's not familiar with the area, we are located at the southwestern tip of Nova Scotia. Hopefully we have somebody that's not even from Canada viewing. So the Harbor Authority is just looking to upgrade and beautify our harbor. Just a simple mission statement is, this initiative is to enhance the Port Maitland Harbor and surrounding areas by becoming a multiple functional harbor. And the plan is simple. We just want to create a platform or a better climate to support tourism combined with pleasure and commercial harboring, and to create a model for economic growth all the while protecting and complementing the adjacent Port Maitland Provincial Park. It's a bit of a three-point approach where we think that tourism is important, and we want to facilitate that as a flow from the beach area to the wharves. And there is an outer basin beach, and ultimately we have in our mind that we want to create expand our harbor. So with that, we hope to do that in a way where we can promote economic growth with private and commercial, private and corporate, commercial and retail investment. We can maintain the inner basin harbor for haven during adverse weather conditions and use it as let it function normally. And again, we talked about creating this outer harbor, which will create an all-tide accessible outer basin that we can both entertain seasonal and commercial vessels. So ultimately, we hope to attract more numbers. So to kick this off, or as a kickstart for this initiative, you can see that we have an area of interest that we labeled Area 1. And in this area here, we would like to create a small boardwalk, probably about 25 feet long, and it can, where we can put a little couple benches and some stairs to lead down to the beach. So it's easily accessible to go from the wharf to the beach. And you can also see in the insert where it says Sands Dunes looking northwest, that there's a lot of foot traffic across this area. And it is wearing down the dunes, and they are migrating towards some of the structures we have there. So we'd sort of like to protect that too. And not only that, but both of these, if you climb down over the rocks or the dunes, it's not ideal access to the beach, but a lot of people do use it. So we sort of solve a couple problems at the same time. And it is in, and as you see, right in that same area, we also have a tidal gate, which basically is really our lifeline. It flushes the harbor of sediment and really keeps it, without that, our increased times of entering and exiting the harbor would be much higher because we cannot get in and out at low water. So it's an essential lifeline for us. And this is in the area where we want to work with you folks and probably Small Crass Harbor too, because the area there is a little bit in repair, so I think we can draw them into the equation. And we can create an area where we can create that flow up and down from the wharf to the beach and what have you, and develop, because of this tidal gate area, if you actually go and search around, it seems to be pretty unique. You cannot find like a mirror image anywhere else in the world that I know of that's used for this purpose. So it's actually quite unique. It's fully automated now. It was one of the things we've done more recently, and it's performing beyond our expectation. It replaces dredging. So it's really working well. I believe the cost it was built 30 years ago, and we had to upgrade it and automate it, and I think Small Crass Harbor contributed around $160,000 for that. So we were happy about all that. And where we reached out to the community to get their ideas of what they'd like to have here, this is a high-level look at what they sort of came up with the fishers themselves contributing and what have you. So the community's engaged. They're familiar with the project, and they're willing to volunteer their time. So in this instance here, in this Kickstart area, we're just basically looking for funds to buy materials, because I think in-kind labor will all be donated by the fishing people, the fishers and the community. So that's a little different than maybe the application that I applied for, but it does evolve. It is sort of a live document. So stage 2, or whatever, it would be to combine the stairs, the boardwalk and pathways connecting the Port Maitland Beach, the inner harbor area where you'd have a boardwalk going across, as you can see in the red, and then it would go to the outer basin beach, which is everybody calls a little beach or whatever. It's sort of been a local favorite, but we find that there's a lot more traffic there, and I guess it's time to share. So with that, we hope that maybe along that areas, there is people that are interested in, you know, sort of developing Airbnb type accommodations in there. There's a couple properties I know that are being looked at. Hopefully somebody will step up to the plate, and along there we'll investigate the idea of a restaurant. You know, maybe there's areas for local artists and artisans to get in there. There would be some interest if we could get some floating docks, which we'll get to later, of a chartered fishing, and also along there, which one of the properties that you folks control is the lighthouse, which may have potential for development to a museum, but that's sort of outside the Harbor Authority area. And we have had one First Nation group express an interest in what we're doing, because they are looking at maybe investing in the area, both on, you know, for economic growth on their part. So if you go, that was sort of one of the stages, is getting the tidal gate area going. The next stage is we have an opening in our breakwater, which the initial idea was that it would help with this removal of sedimentation, but it's actually created surging and rough conditions within our inner harbor. So the next step is to close this off. And we've reached out to Small Crafts Harbor, and there is a quoted cost of $54,600 to close this up. And Small Crafts Harbor has come back to us and said, this may be a cost share. What do you think about that? Well, we don't want to give up any of our dollars, but if it's a small amount, then we'll do that. So with that would be stage 2. Now, if you see the little red triangle, this is actually, I got the wording of that. Doesn't word correctly. So it's to build a 15-meter groin or jetty to test a concept to hydraulically move sediments, and it should be the other way around, by means of longshore current and littoral drift. And that would take them out into the offshore, and they'd be lost to the offshore, because that doesn't protect, or that does impede our ability to get in at low water. And we're wondering if just by directing some natural processes, if we might get that out. And there's a little concept of how that would work. It doesn't sort of quite line up with, you'd have to spin it around, it's a mirror image, but you can get a concept of how what we're actually looking at. And you see that's quite common up and down the eastern seaboard and that, so not so much around here. But it's a bit of a concept that we came up with, and lo and behold, we found a 1995 coastal study that was done by the federal government, the coastal marine people, and they sort of, it actually supports this idea. They're in agreement. So, and that helped us promote our closure of that area. So that's critical. Those 3 things have to be done before we consider of our grandiose approach into the Oder Basin, where we're looking at moving. If you look at these areas, you can see that we're suggesting floating docks where we can build another capacity for 10 or 12 boats, and a little crib work at the end of our existing wharf, because it's easily accessible for trucks and what have you to unload. And we think we can, if we can get that sand moved by a natural process or dredging it, and once we set this scenario up, it won't come back. So we're not asking for those dollars at this point in time. What we're asking is the Small Crafts or the federal people to look at that as an option to build capacity for what may be cost-effective to create berthage that could be competitive with other areas. So since we got some infrastructure, a little bit of build, we may be competitive. And they usually use a thing of vessel meterage rate, but there's a cost associated with that. So we're just asking them to take a look at that. Now, we haven't got any confirmation on that. We're hoping that message does get to them. So stage 1 is checked. Stage 2 is in process, the filling of the hole. The jetty will come afterwards, and then stage 4 is an actual build, and that's a very large commitment, and maybe it's just a pipe dream until we get there, but you know, no, we want to try. So we'll go to the summary. So at the time when I put in the application, we were looking for $2,500, and that's in that area 1, the kickstart area. And the estimated cost there of materials, and we can, you know, make it as grandiose if not, if we get more money. And we're looking to cost share that, because we had a fundraiser and we do have some funds available, and they come from the community. So we think they should be put back into an area where the community can enjoy that. Now, since there is some deterioration at the head of the wharf there, we will approach Small Grass Harbor to see if they can throw something in there. So that could be the three of us working on that. Now, to build the boardwalk and pathways across, stuff like that, it's just a space that I'm not used to. I don't really get in here, but it's probably going to take more dollars, and I suspect that's provincial dollars, or, you know, somebody come along with a pocket full of money or whatever have you. That's the thing that, but we think that's important to lay down the climate for economic growth. So sort of as I was putting this together, the $50,000 to fill in the hole, I've actually been, I got feedback from Small Crafts Harbor, and they have committed to that process. So that's going ahead. The start date for that is December 5th. However, we're not going to do the jetty. We're just going to fill in that hole, and that should make a really greatly improve the conditions in the inner harbor. So stage 2 is on its way. And as I said, we're going to approach the feds to see if they'll evaluate that, to see if we can be, you know, competitive in the vessel per meter cost type thing. So, and then the third thing just to throw out there is, you know, just to keep, if we're going to build this up to bring more people, maybe we can ask the provincial park peoples if they would entertain the idea of putting campsites in or something, have you. So there's a lot more ideas out there. 10 minutes, I think I probably covered it. So I'd like to thank you once again and ask away.
All right, thank you very much, Derek. Is there any questions for him? I do believe Councillor Patty Durkee, you're first on the queue. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Derek. And I need to say a huge thank you to the group at the Harbour Authority for taking on this project. We don't want our wharf to deteriorate anymore. We know that in fisheries, there's certainly lack of space for boats, and so if we can make improvements to this area, it will certainly help with economic development. So Derek, could you just elaborate on what type of economic development you think could happen in the area when these projects are completed?
Okay. I sort of touched on it here. We think that to increase our numbers, that's great. I mean, if we can bring more boats to the area, that's a huge impact. Secondly, if we can entertain an area or work with a group such as First Nations who wants to, has expressed an interest to have a presence in this area, and they want to, and they're not sure which way they want to go. Is it a commercial development, or is it a retail development, or is it a combination of both? But it is important for them that since there's only a small available amount of private land for sale, that it is going to be imperative for them to work with the Harbour Authority and Small Crafts Harbor, and we're willing to do that. We've engaged them a couple times already, so you know we like that, and I'm on the wrong page here. So there's all kinds of spin-offs, you know, because if people see that traffic area in coming from the beach, which I think is a draw already, and you increase those numbers, then you're looking, especially if there's people that are looking at ideas of creating, you know, accommodations close to the beach and stuff. I think that's great. You know, there's an opportunity again, as I mentioned, with the lighthouse. I think if you could, you know, we have a real rich history of shipwrecks and stuff at Trinity, and I think that sort of gets lost in the local history, which I think we could shine a light on that. And there is a book which is actually was sort of spearheaded or created by my grandmother, and quite proud of that. And it would be nice to showcase some of her stuff and preserve that, which is being done at the Hook and See a little bit, and like Patty's shop and stuff, that I think you could really grow this down to the beach area and add a lot of, you know, there's a lot of different ideas. My daughter, who's got an eye on taking over from me, said, geez, Dad, if that, we got floating docks in there, I'd like to go charter, So I said, hey, sure, fill your boots. So those are a few ideas. There's probably more that have been suggested. There's lots of suggestions. It's when you take it to the community, it's to capture it all in a short presentation is difficult.
Thank you. Derek, while I still have the floor, a couple of things. We know how famous Halls Harbor is now, and all they really have there is a restaurant. And so I think, and I've always said that there is so much potential, and it could be a real tourist destination if we develop that. And of course, everybody knows I've been driving council nuts with trying to do something with the fog alarm building, which I think would make a great little museum, and that would also open up a space in order for people to get to that outer basin beach. So there is lots of potential. And so I have a quick question for our CAO through you, Mr. Chair. Do we have funds available in our placemaking pot of money?
Not in this fiscal year, but it's not unusual for council to make provisions for the next fiscal year, so to pre-approve a project if all of the elements that council's looking for in place. It's not unusual to pre-approve this year for the funds, the cash to flow next year.
Okay, I know there are still a couple of questions, which can come after, but I'm going to make the motion that we refer this to regular council for approval for their request, which would be in the next budget year.
A motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right. You done, Councillor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, your mic was off. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Thomas, for the presentation. It was excellent, and glad to hear you and the community are working hard on the project, and I'll be supportive as a councillor, certainly with Modi with regard to your project, and hoping that it comes to total fruition and maybe even more after that. So thanks again for all your efforts in Modi. Appreciate it.
Oh, I think.
There you go.
Yes.
Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor after.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Councillor. I appreciate that.
You're not done yet.
Oh, no. Probably saving the
I've
worst or the toughest for last.
That's right. Derek and I go back many, many, many years. But it's a good project you got there. Small Crafts Harbor's land, is that where that walkway is too, or is that private land? Where your proposed walking trail?
For Small Crafts, are you saying
Is
the
that-
slide we
is
have
that Small
there?
Crafts Harbor land?
Yes, yeah.
It is.
That is, yeah. It runs, if you look where it says Green Cove, there's some,
Yes.
there's some infrastructure there, which is now Ford, I can't remember Ford Fisheries.
Yeah.
And that's private, but even some of their infrastructure is on Small Crafts Harbor land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we deal with them already.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can appreciate your concern about a tidal port. They're not very efficient especially for nowadays fishing, and the size of the boats that were in Port Mainland, that some of them moved to Cape St. Mary's, and I think some went to Sanford too, just because of the size of the boats. But so it's a very important thing down the road to try to get that outer basin protected for such. As for the tourism factor and whatnot, for the councillors who do not really know about the Port Mainland area, and I'm sure Derek knows about it, but I'll mention it. There used to be a lot of tours, fishing boat tours out of Port Mainland, and one of the guys who used to do it he's my age, went to high school with him, and his father done it before that. They used to go out to Trinity, do a little fishing, have a lobster chowder, and and stuff like that and come back. So that was very popular back in the day, so that's something that could be restored again with your overall plan. And again, I'll mention just to let some of the councilors know too, that they always say that Port Maitland was built on night fishing because of Trinity close to it. There used to be catch a lot of codfish there and pollock and whatnot, so that, and herring, of course. And it's only probably about six miles off?
Correct.
Yep,
Yep.
6 miles off the Trinity, so a fairly close fishing ground, very rich fishing ground in his day. So it certainly does have a lot of potential, and I'll certainly be supportive and to try to make more of a tourist area. And of course, I'm going to be competing you with on Small Craft and Harbors funding, because I have a harbor too that I have to look after, so.
It's all important.
It's what it is, it's all important, that's right, so.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you, Derek, for your.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I just trying to think, maybe you could be the curator for the museum. That's if you're looking for another job. So. Yeah, and that's right. It's my grandfather also was part of that charter business and had quite a developed clientele. Yeah, and there's still a lot of where I moved back to the old homestead. I picked up a lot of that memorabilia type stuff. Yeah.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, just one last comment. In planning of that boardwalk, one of the things to make sure you please keep in mind is accessibility, and if there's any chance that we could make the beach accessible from that side, that would be really helpful too.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, but, you know, it comes down to dollars. One of the good things is that the park is accessible.
Yes.
So if we could make that, that would even be much greater. You know, first things first is we really would like to slow that traffic and make it a lot safer just to get up and down there. And I think it would really direct, if you want to measure without even doing anything at all, you could measure the matrix of that, or the metrics of that real easy, just because Living Wharves is right there. And if you saw their numbers go up just because it was easy for people to visit from the beach, you would know that you had some success right away without doing anything. And then, plus we'd put a guest book and all that other stuff with, you know, if we developed a viewing area.
All right, I see no more microphones. Derek, I do have a couple really quick questions. The picture that's up there now, is that a picture of low tide?
Yes, and actually, do we have a pointer here? Oh, geez, there we go. Yeah, amateur. Yeah, so that's a 2019 photograph, and you can actually, there is quite a bit of, yeah. So if I can't get on it. But you can actually see the development of that sandbar where it actually comes from the beach and it moves in a southwest direction.
Yeah.
And actually, we've had one thing that we didn't expect, or the coastal study didn't predict, we did expect it as fishers, was when we automated the tide gate that we would start to dredge that, and we are. That is happening. And that other concept of moving that out. I'm ahead of, you didn't even ask questions, so I'm already ahead of you. But yeah, and it's been drilled, and we know that it's fairly thick, and it supports the same idea that it's a longshore current occurrence that creates littoral drift and creates that sandbar. So the source is from the beach, from the north.
Okay, my next question would be, in regards to that, is there access to a boat launch there anywhere?
Okay, no, there isn't, and that's one thing that I didn't touch on. We do have a slipway that's not very functional for us anymore because the boats need more wet water to get onto it. And what we're doing is sometimes we have to do a little inner harbor leveling and what have you. So we put the spoils in front of the slipway, which we want to then fill in the slipway to use as an interim small boat launch. Now, if we go to the larger plan, you can see just to the right of the parking lot spoils area that we are proposing a boat launch haul-out area there. And that would facilitate all size vessels.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that a lot of people don't know about me is I really enjoy getting out on the ocean in small crafts, and access to areas like this is is paramount, because I do travel from the town of Yarmouth or even Chabot and travel up around that area because it's a really nice ride. So yeah, I'm all about tourism and expanding and multi-use harbors and stuff like that.
Yeah, we think
so.
it's imperative to our survival, and we really hope someday that you can come in and either tie at the floating docks, or maybe even go right to the inner harbor and tie to, you know, something that was developed out there and have lunch and have what have you, right? So, you know, it's all a dream, but I think we're looking at a template here that's sort of unique. When everybody says, well, it could be Halls Harbor, well, it could be Halls Harbor, it could be Peggy's Cove, or it could be even Eastern Passage. And I like the idea that we may be a stop along the way for small crafts, seasonal vessels that, you know, as you go up and down the coastline, and even be able to provide.
Absolutely, and the thing that I always go back to is the Ivany report that was released quite a few years ago.
Right.
And one of the things that we were talking about is diversifying and having things for people to do, and tourism. You had mentioned tourism. There is a lot of boats that come here from New Brunswick.
Absolutely, and those are, we think that's, you know, why have a harbor that usually, you know, it's going to facilitate the commercial fleet, and we fish during the wintertime. We can just move up out of the way and let the seasonals, you know, have at it, right? So,
Absolutely, yeah. Typically, we don't make motions during presentations, but there was one made, and it's being moved forward to council. And thank you very much, Derek, for your presentation. Much appreciated.
thank you. I'm glad that we broke the norm and you made a suggestion, and it's now on the table. Thanks again for the time.
Thank you,
All
Derek.
right. Take care.
All right, the next item on the agenda is item 7.2, Deep Sky Eye. We have with us Tim Doucette. The microphone's already on, so as soon as you're ready, you can start. You might see me get up and leave for a second, but I'll be right back.
All right, perfect.
I'll make sure that you're going and... There you go. Thank you very much.
We're up? Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you very much, councilors, for giving me the floor today. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is a repeat, but it's always good to have a refresher. I'm not sure if I'm moving forward or backward. There we go. Perfect. So today I'm just going to recap a little bit about the Starlight Foundation and what we've accomplished so far. Things are moving along very well, I must say. I'm going to briefly talk about lighting again. Why should you care? And the benefits of what we're doing and the expenses that we are incurring to have this special situation that we have. So the Starlight Foundation, again, is a repeat, is a group from Spain from the Canary Islands, and their responsibility or their initiative is to help protect the night skies, educate astrotourism, education in the astronomy, and also as part of our heritage and our culture. So since 2014, we have been certified in Southwest Nova. The municipalities of Clare, Argyll, and Yarmouth have been certified as the first Starlight tourist destination and reserve in North America. And we are currently the 4th in the world to have both certifications. So what does this mean? Well, first I'll mention too that I have looked at the strategic plan for municipality of and district of Yarmouth, and I see astrotourism is in there. So this will very fit exactly into what what we've been trying to do. So astrotourism, we've been growing experiences in our area in all 3 municipalities, and they're continuing to grow. Different vendors, different people who have decided to take on astrotourism as a business, not just myself with Deep Sky Eye, but of course Trout Point Lodge. We've had a new addition, Forest Glen Adventures, this year, so that's pretty exciting. Yarmouth and Acadian Shores has been a big supporter of this initiative. They promote astrotourism in our region here in Yarmouth, to the ferry boat that's been going to the US, and I must say that has been a huge success for us this year. Deep Sky Eye has had about 30% of all of our visitors come from the ferry this year. So that's a big jump. So we're part of a committee called the Starlight Development Committee. We're a group of volunteers that there's about 8 of us, and we've grown to the point now where we are trying to create a society that will encompass people from the different regions, Yarmouth, Clare, and Argyll. We currently now have 15 on the list, and we're trying to get this society up and running before the end of the year, because there's a lot of stuff that we still have to do. Everything that we do is basically growing astrotourism, education, and astronomy in our region. So we're following the initiatives of the Starlight Foundation. That's our whole objective. This year, we've partnered with Nova Scotia Tourism. We now have on Nova Scotia Tourism's site a section dedicated towards stargazing, with a form that teaches people a little bit about what to expect when they're going to go stargazing. So you can go on their website, and they hit like 2.5 million users every year on their website. So it's a big deal when they go and they click and they say, oh, stargazing, and then they see Yarmouth Acadian Shores, and you know, it brings all that tourism energy, tourism dollars down this way. Efficiency Nova Scotia, we've even gone as far as partnering with Nova Scotia Power on trying to select the next generation of dark sky friendly street lighting, so that when people call and they say, oh, you're in the municipality of Yarmouth, or you're in the municipality of Clare, or municipality of Argyll, oh, you're in a dark sky area, you need these type of lights, and this is how we have to install them. So given our expansion, we definitely will certainly need to have more volunteers, and we have the people that are interested in doing that. So we have about 15 that are interested. We're having our AGM in November or December, and we will have to swear in all the new people. We've won awards for our region, for the Acadian Skies and Mi'kmaq Lands for astronomy and teaching astronomy. So that was the first Starlight Awards. That's just a little recap on that. So lighting and light pollution. Light pollution is essentially light that's shining where it's not wanted or needed. And the biggest light pollution is from sky glow, essentially, is light that's shining up from the sky, from a large number of lights shining up in the sky and reflecting off those particles of light, of water and dust, and blocking your view of the stars. We measure the sky darkness by what's called the Bortle scale. And just so you know, out there in Quinnen, we're in about a 1.5 right now to 2. That can slowly creep up to 3, 4 eventually, if, of course, lighting continues to grow. What can you do about lighting? Well, very simply, these 4 things. Put the proper shielding, pick the proper color, pick the proper brightness, and of course put them on a motion sensor or timer. I will be approaching you folks next year again on coming up with a solution to the existing lights that are currently installed in the municipality, to provide a solution that will hopefully bring us back to the dark sky friendly lighting category. The lighting currently does not meet Starlight recommendations. So we'll work on that. One thing to note, and some of the myths that people really have a hard time with, is that more light does not equal better security. As you can see from an example here, somebody hiding in the shadows. You can see, for example, in the bottom picture too, those 2 pictures, you can see there's a gentleman on the pathway. You can see him very well. There's a lot of light there. and this is actually from Ottawa. And he's hiding in the bushes there, behind the pole, and you don't see him because of the glare of the light. If the light was done properly, you'd be able to see that person regardless of where he is. So it all has to do with lighting design, and really trying to get an understanding of, you know, where do you need the light and where and how much light do you really need. So why should you care about all this besides tourism dollars? Well, lots of different examples of the effects of light pollution, not just not being able to see the stars, but everything from the nocturnal life, the nocturnal species, the environment, algae growth. We have a lot of freshwater lakes here, and to have lighting along the edge and along the shorelines can really increase that algae growth. In that example there, that's an example from Rideau Ferry on Ottawa, where one of the lakes was destroyed completely because they put lighting on the shoreline, white lighting that is bioactive and not basically increased algae growth. Everything from migratory birds, and of course the human connection is important. You know, we're all stardust, and really to understand, you know, to lose that connection from where we came from, where we're from, which is out there, we start to lose the connection between each other, and we definitely don't want that. So, our benefits to the municipality, of course, we know is tourism. People are coming here to look at the stars. And, you know, we really want to show the world, you know, that we are supportive of the Dark Sky Initiative. And it can't be done a little bit. It pretty much has to be done all or nothing, because, you know, eventually people get around trying to, you know, increase lighting, you know, maybe for no reason or some reason they think is a good thing. But once we start including groups like the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and such, things become a little bit more worldwide. Of course, preserves our heritage and our way of life, attracts other businesses, and hopefully, you know, eventually we may attract other scientists, other groups. I know in New Brunswick they're opening up, the Canada Space Agency is opening up an office there in Moncton. So, you know, there's no reason why they couldn't open up an office here in you know, in Yarmouth. Especially if we can have the dark skies for them to have, you know, to do research. NASA may be here before we know it. So, some of the things that are in our sort of in our budget here. So, we're now due for recertification for our area. Recertification for the certification happens every 4 years. And since 2014, Yarmouth, Clare, and Argyll have all put money towards this initiative. So we started this as 3 municipalities, but Yarmouth, or I should say, the municipality of Argyll has been sort of paying for everything since then. And that's just a sort of a breakdown here of, you know, we've paid about $5,000 so far. And the recertification this year in 2020 is due at the end of 2022. So we have to have recertification happen by the end of the year, and it's about 10,000 Canadian dollars. Right now, we put in a funding request to the municipality of Clare, and they've put forward $4,000 for that initiative. We've asked for the town of Yarmouth as well for $4,000. That's in progress. They'll be voting on that shortly. And Yarmouth and Canadian Shores, we've got a $1,000 request from them, and that's also in progress, and that's looking pretty good. So we're requesting from the municipality of Yarmouth $4,000 to help pay for the initiative, for the recertification, to also for education and the creation of the new society. So, oh, did I press the wrong button? Okay. So, again, A special thanks to the businesses and such that have already sort of switched their lighting over to dark sky friendly lighting. I've seen a few in town already, so that's pretty exciting. And, you know, let's really try and protect our dark skies for generations to come. Thank you very much. Questions? Oh,
All
and
right.
I've also submitted an application in for funding as well.
Councillor Lauren Christian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tim, for your presentation. A couple things I want to ask you about. If you go back to the slide, I couldn't make out what the rest of the word was. Is it Zona, Z-O-N-A, one of the very first ones you did? Just wanted to,
Sure. How far back?
oh, probably right, almost to the beginning.
Just tell me when.
Something that caught my interest right away there. Right there.
Yeah.
The area that's in orange, does that go up to the southern tip of the Tobiatic Reserve?
That's the orange part, which is that center part you're talking about? Yeah, that goes up the Tobiatic, yeah.
Goes up to Tobiatic Reserve?
Yes, it does, yeah. So one of the suggestions from the Starlight Foundation, and that's the reserve part, is actually putting an observatory up there. So that's on our,
That's where I was coming from.
yeah, that's on our list to do. And one of the things I've been trying to do, well, we've been trying to do as a committee, is we're trying to find somebody from the community that would join our group to be part of it. So that's another thing that we've been struggling to try to find the right connection there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think we should talk afterwards.
okay.
Okay? And the opportunities that you talked about, attract scientists and NASA and et cetera, is there actually interest there, or is it hypothetical?
Well, actually, I think there is interest, and I'm going to tell you right now that NASA knows that Deep Sky Eye exists because we were contacted. We captured a meteor that
Really?
that flew,
Yeah.
overhead, and it was a couple of years ago, and I was contacted by the Dave Lane from the St. Mary's University in Halifax, and he wanted the pictures, and he said NASA wants, we're going to contact you. They want the pictures. We sent all the data to them. So they know we're here, they know we have a dark sky area.
Good.
So, hey, they're looking to put a rocket launch pad up north in Cape Breton area type thing.
Right.
So, I think it's one of those things that once they start to become aware, it is hypothetical, but we're not invisible. So.
Yeah. Your contact is on that, on the bottom of the slides. I could contact you through that easy enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Right, I was here when, at the council table, when the dark skies designation was arrived at and was part of the presentations and those types of things, and it was excellent. I'm glad to see that we were able to, we were able to achieve that in the area. Having said that, you did mention that the certification needs to take place by the end of 2022, I believe. That's correct.
Yes.
And so in terms of timing of the funding, I'm assuming that you would like the funding sooner rather than later
Yeah.
to fulfill that. So are you talking about, like, if we were able to secure the funding for you, or, sort of what type of timeline would you be looking at to receive the funding in terms of the outside timeline?
Well, we have to have it done technically by December 31st. I mean, the foundation is fairly lenient if we need a little bit more time. Even if the two certifications is 3,500 each euros. Again, sooner the better if we can secure the funding. I know 4,000 of it is on the way, the check's in the mail, so we'll have, and I assume we'll be pretty close to it. for the 10,000, I'm hoping before the end of the year.
So thank you, and just a follow-up question to the CAO through you, Mr. Chair. What account might we use to do this in the near term if we're going to fund the $4,000?
There are still funds in the community grants contingency. And I
Right.
think that we have an allotment that we could satisfy this request.
Okay, so I'll move that we move this forward to regularly scheduled council for additional conversation.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Patty Durkee. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just a couple comments on your presentation. Wonderful to see you again, Tim. We did pass a motion, I believe, to investigate a dark skies policy or something along that lines, and I believe it's been referred to be incorporated in our new land use bylaw. Maybe the CAO can confirm that. Would that be correct?
Yes. Hi, I can see you barely. Yep, that's correct. So the draft revisions to the municipal planning strategy do outline some policies, but I made a couple of notes with respect to the information that Tim shared today, and I think he shared it with us before, but it resonated with me today, about white light being bioactive and some of council's values around protecting fresh water. So there could be more we can do there.
Yeah, so I think my comment to Tim was that process should be finished in the next, well, we'll get a draft review of it soon, and we'll see at that point what's been done and where we can go with this in the future. So I'm excited about that, and I had a 2-minute conversation with Neil, what's Neil's last name? Mackenzie, prior to coming in here today specifically about this, and he said there's no choice. This is something that we need to be supporting. I just looked at the Cape First Shoe website where we're actively advertising this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and he would write a letter of support if need be. So, great presentation, and congratulations on all the work that you've put in and what you've brought back to the community. One question is, of those, I was just kind of curious, you said 30% of your the people that have gone to Quinnen are off the ferry. Is that, do you know kind of roughly what number that would be, tourism-wise?
We've hit pretty close to 1,000 visitors this summer.
Okay.
It's very close. So figure from there, it's about 300.
Okay, perfect. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. Thank you. And when you have a draft policy, let me know. Send it off, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Tim, very much for your presentations. I see no other microphones, so I'm going to take this opportunity. As you know, we do have a street lighting policy. And one of the, in there, item 3.2, the Dark Skies Initiative, and it says as a reference, see International Dark Sky Association. So my question to you would be, has the lighting specifications changed?
Yes, it has.
And when have they changed?
It has, I don't know if it's formally changed yet, but from what last I was reading not long ago, that they were looking to change the color temperature of the light from 2700 Kelvin down to 2300 Kelvin, which kind of brings back, like they say, amber is back. A lot of some of the towns are getting back into the amber color strictly for that reason. Because anything that has a blue component of light is bioactive.
Okay, it's, in this here, it says, generally this type of lighting such as lumens groundward and not skyward. And that's what we had strived to do when we installed the new streetlights throughout the municipality. I was not aware at that time that color was a concern. And as the CEO had mentioned about the bio issue, and sorry, you also had mentioned, so this policy here has not been revised in the past few years, and maybe we should be looking at that along with doing our MPS LUB, which is going to have a component in there in regard to street lighting.
Yeah.
Because I too, like the deputy warden was here when this was first brought to our attention, so.
Yeah, that'd be great. And again, we can provide more information too when you need it.
Is there, my final question in regards to what is actually, Dark Sky, is that organization is still continuing on, correct?
Sorry, it's,
Dark Sky?
it's
Or
our
has it
organization.
changed? Yeah,
It's-
darksky.org.
It's not Dark Sky. Our organization is the Starlight Development
Yeah.
Committee. Yeah.
Okay. So, seeing no more questions or comments, thank you very much, Tim, on behalf of council and the residents of the municipality. Appreciated you coming in and speaking with us today.
Thank you very much. Oh, and I'll mention one other thing just before I leave. There'll be a little bit more promotion coming to our area. I was approached earlier this year. They're doing a documentary. There's a company called Bellefeuille Productions. They're doing a documentary on myself and the Deep Sky Observatory. So we filmed for 2 weeks. We filmed in different places in our area, up in Cape Fourchou. We will be finishing the documentary. It's like a full 1-hour documentary. It's in French. It's from AMI TV. And the last part of the documentary is going to be filmed in another part of the world. So we're very excited. I can't say it out on public, but if you have a question, if you want to know, just ask me. But we have a connection to this other part of the world as well, and directly in Yarmouth. So it's very exciting, and expect some pretty cool stuff coming down the road. Some
All right.
good promotional stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, moving on to the final presentation of today, item 7.3, the Director of Development and Inspection, Mr. Roger Devine. The microphone's on. As soon as you're ready, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council, for having me this afternoon. Just have a brief update on some of the activities in the Development Office. And we've had some busier and just a few slower periods during 2022. We are still very busy in the Development Office. Applications for building permits continue to come in, and we're reviewing a steady number of building inquiries. We started getting busy early in the spring, which I would say was at least a month, it was at least a month earlier than typical years. And when I talk about typical years, it would be years prior to 2020 and the COVID. We were busy through the summer, and there was a brief slowdown in September and the first part of October. Midway through October, though, it got busy again, and will likely stay that way for a while. I wanted to just talk a little bit about subdivision activity as well. Subdivision applications continue to arrive, and along with frequent inquiries. Some persons who were either thinking about subdividing or people who would like to know what their subdivision options are before hiring a surveyor, beginning the process, contact us and ask all their questions. Since the adoption of the latest municipal subdivision bylaw, I have been fielding calls about the requirement for parkland dedication. And as you know, we have been presenting recommendations to council regarding parkland dedication nearly every month. Not all subdivisions require parkland dedication. For example, subdivisions where lot boundaries are changed but no new lots are created do not require parkland dedication. A decision on parkland dedication is also not required when lots or parcels are consolidated, but again, no additional lots are created. The requirement for parkland dedication involves approximately 1/2 of our subdivision files. That's the ones that we process. I did have an inquiry that I looked into talking about shipping containers and how they are assessed by Property Evaluation Services. And so I got a little information on that, very little, but it might be enlightening. Shipping containers are flat valued. So they're valued between approximately $3,000 and $5,000 each, according to their size. And flat value means that they're not depreciated over time, and their value remains the same. And that's my brief. So I'd like to entertain any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Roger, for this summary. When you talk about shipping containers, so when Property Valuation Services evaluates, assesses their value, is that based on things around it and things in it? So you could build a complete tiny home inside and it's only based, and the assessment would only be on the $3,000 to $5,000 range, no matter what it is on the inside? Is that accurate?
So that would not be accurate. So if it's a
Okay.
shipping container just for example, for an accessory storage building,
Yes?
that would be the value. But
Okay.
as soon as it turns into something like a dwelling, that whole valuation changes. And if it does turn into a dwelling, I'm sure it would be depreciated. But a number of changes, especially structurally, would have to happen to them. So that would be picked up in the building
Okay.
permit application
Okay.
stage.
Perfect, thanks.
Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Roger, and it just does not cease to amaze me how many buildings I see going up in the municipality. There's a new one just down the road. It's pretty amazing. My question actually has to do with unsightly. And I want just clarification. We made you an officer, correct? Does that mean that you can actually go out and if you drive by a house that is unsightly, that you can do something? Or do we still need the requirement of someone to complain in the neighborhood that would be willing to say why they need? I just want this to be made public. I think the public needs to know how this is done, because I know we have someone in particular feeling that, why can't you just go and say, oh, that's a really unsightly property and not safe because it's empty, et cetera, and then do something about it? Can you clarify that, please?
Yeah, so eventually, and not always, these files turn into files where we have to clean up a property, of course. And that can be done by order to remedy through the Municipal Government Act by council. Or things may escalate and they may end up going to court. So that's more to do with if things escalate and they go to court. So it's sort of a evidence-based thing then. You know, you have to have probable grounds to be somewhere. At least it looks better in the eyes of the judge. So if we have a complete file where we have a signed and written complaint, we can state that we received a signed and written complaint, and with details specifically as to what the dangerous and unsightly situation might be. It could be anything, of course, as you know, from something like a property that might be an allurement to children and a danger to children, anything from that to a deteriorated building. So it's all to do with creating a complete file, keeping our eye on the fact that it may end up in court someday. So that's why we do the extra step and do our due diligence and get the signed and written complaint. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You done? Thank you. Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Roger. Expanding on Councillor Durkee, what she was saying about unsightly, correct me if I'm wrong, did we not have some type of description of what would unsightly be? Didn't you do that for us one time?
Yes, so there's a description in the Municipal Government Act in the interpretation section that lists a number of things. I think it's in the range of 15 things, maybe. I'm only guessing there. It's lettered, not numbered. But it describes a list of any number of things, and it can be things even such as lowering of your property values, lowering of the neighboring property values. So that list, we have gone over that list, Councillor Cushing, but it is in the Municipal Government Act.
Good. Thank you, Roger.
All right, no, don't worry about that. People might have noticed a little bit of a backfeed ring. That was from someone who has an a hearing aid, which is backfeeding through our system, so. I see no more questions. Roger, thank you very much for that presentation, and hopefully we continue on keeping you a very busy man.
Thank you for having me today. Appreciate that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Look at that, right on time for presentations. Yeah, just turn that one off, Roger. Thank you. All right, item number 8, old business, was deleted from the agenda, and it was moved down to item 9.5 under new business about a different date. So we'll move on to item number 9, new business, 9.1, draft citizen appointment to committees, boards and authorities, policy C-026-05. Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and our Deputy CAO is with us today, too, to help fill in the conversation as we go through your legislative pieces today. So this policy is back before council as a result of some learning that Darlene and I had recently with respect to citizens who council appoints to a board or agency that has its own governing bylaws that set out the terms and conditions for its directors. And so it was appropriate to amend this policy to reflect that in Part 15.1, notwithstanding the foregoing, where an appointment is being made to a separate legal entity, the terms of office outlined by intermunicipal agreement of the bylaws of that entity shall supersede this policy. So we wanted to clarify that. So as we usually do, when we open something up, we take a peek at the whole thing. And wanted to freshen the document up. So a change that we've made at the municipality of Yarmouth is to do consistent intake for the citizen rep positions that council appoints people to. So we updated the language in 2.1 to reflect that it's more or less continuous. We also wanted to include, to be explicit in including our values around accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion. In Part 5, we just wanted to be more clear for people in terms of what is the process once an application is submitted. So when applications come in, staff do review them to make sure they're complete, make sure they qualify, and we send them off to council with whatever notes need to be sent off, and then that council makes those appointments, not staff. Part 6, we did indicate that for some committees, council has chosen to make the term of office for appointments a little bit different. So Accessibility Advisory, for example, has inside its terms of reference some specifications around the appointments there. So we did need to include that in this policy just to make them compliant and consistent. And then in 13.1, we've got some language in there, and it's a bit of old business that we're bringing back to the top for council to discuss. Under the Accessibility Advisory Committee, council has approved a stipend of, I believe this year it's $55, to help offset expenses that a citizen rep may incur in order to participate in the committee. So if an individual needs a personal aid to help get ready to come to the committee, if an individual needs to pay for transportation, if an individual needs to pay for a support during a meeting, there's a little bit of money available to help offset those expenses. And at the time when council was discussing that, one of the councilors around the table mentioned, well, if we're doing it for Accessibility Advisory, does it not make sense to do it across the board? So Darlene and I are submitting that language to you today for your discussion and your debate, since the policy is open for review. So those are the changes, Mr. Chair.
Any questions, comments? Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The word qualification, how does how can I say this properly? Each person who wants to sit on a certain committee, they have to fit a criteria of qualifications in order to sit on that?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay.
For example, 50% of the individuals on the Accessibility Advisory Committee have to identify as having a barrier of some
Oh, yeah.
sort.
No,
Yeah.
that's very understandable. But for instance, like a recreation or PAC or, solid waste, or is there some qualifications there that?
Inside this policy, there are things that are required. So for example, your citizen reps, right now, you are looking for them to be residents of the municipality, the District of
Yes.
Yarmouth. Moving forward, you're going to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and you will have specific attributes that you will be looking for there. And so, yeah, that step in the process is just so staff can review them and confirm with council if the qualifying requirements are met.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to sit on a committee. We
So-
know about the accessibility, that's cut and dry.
Right,
We know
so
that's going to happen.
if there are qualifying elements, they are stated in council's policy or in the terms of reference, and they're laid out in the advertisement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Yes, just to put it on the floor, I'll move that citizen appointment to committees, boards, and authorities policy C-026-05 be forwarded to the next regular scheduled council meeting for approval.
Okay, a motion on the floor. I have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Any more discussion on that? Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I really appreciate the amendment log at the bottom in blue. I think that really will show continuum from every time that we have to do some changes. So I appreciate having that there. So thanks to you both.
Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 13.1, are you removing the first part and adding the yellow section? Because they clearly
No, it's in addition to Councillor
So
Hilton.
shall not be compensated, and then, okay, Modi recognizes that there will be financial barriers, okay. So, I know in the accessibility document, no, I've read at some point, there's a definition of where you qualify for that the funds, is there not? Is there a definition that tells you when you qualify for those funds, or is anyone eligible to apply for those funds?
I believe you're right. In the Accessibility Advisory Committee package, it is in there. We will take a look at that, and if there's a requirement for a definition, we will bring it forward for the council meeting, and so it could be that you'll be accepting your recommendation as amended.
Yeah, I would think it would need to reference that policy or something, or add that framework to this policy, one or the other. You're outside of my comfort level, but it needs to be specified, I believe.
All right, is everyone in agreement with that? They have the specification? Yeah. All right, any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on, item 9.2, draft asset management policy A-088-20. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've been working with the team on standing up our asset management program, and part of the initial steps was to take a peek at the policy, which was required to be reviewed, and I think we maybe even be a little bit late in the review. And so I have some revisions to put before you for your consideration today. In Part 2, under definitions, you'll see that we're recommending we strike a sentence with respect to natural assets. We're suggesting that to council because managing natural assets are actually out of the scope of the work because we don't always own them, and we certainly don't always have legislative authority over them. So just for greater clarity, we're recommending to council that we strike those. We are also updating the list of documents that should be considered in strategic alignment, and I think it's important to point out just the depth and breadth of documents that council uses to address the issues that are important to council and to your ratepayers and your electors. So we're adding our subdivision bylaw, the Recreation Strategic Plan, Physical Activity Plan, our Accessibility Plan, our Cape Vershue Master Plan, and our Lake Milo Active Transportation Plan. And down the road, there will be a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan that will have to get added to that. In 5.2, we are recommending to council that we make a slight change at the very end of the sentence. So we had originally used the terminology natural assets, but inside the discipline of asset management, industry is not referring to natural assets anymore. They're referring to low-impact development strategies and green infrastructure, and it's a more all-encompassing way to describe the possible approaches. And then also fitting with council's values and mission, we're recommending the addition of a couple of more phrases around making sure we do take time to reflect on the impact on vulnerable populations and underrepresented individuals, as well as the impact of infrastructure on decisions with respect to the environment and climate change. And then at the very end, on page 4, we've just added any formal community consultation, because there's not always a requirement for consultation, but if there is a requirement for consultation, it absolutely should be council directed and led.
Before I open up the floor to questions, I'm going to start off first. Item 5.4 in this draft asset management policy, it says, and it's striked out fiscal responsibility for asset management decision-making. Does that also erase the paragraph underneath?
Just the title, Mr. Chair.
Just the title, okay. Is there any more questions, comments, concerns, input? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Right, I'll move that the municipality of District of Yarmouth move the asset management policy A-088-20 is circulated to the next regularly scheduled council meeting for approval.
Okay, a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 9.3, draft dog bylaw D-048-22.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this has actually been on our agenda for a while to get to, and Darlene can ring a bell for some success here. She's made it happen, working with our bylaw enforcement team as well as our contractor, the SPCA, and legal to get some revisions to you. So the changes that are presented to you basically reflect the fact that we have a contract with the SPCA, so we don't operate a kennel anymore, and there were lots of references to kennel in the dog bylaw. We also wanted to clarify procedures for barking dogs, and some of the changes come out of the review from legal that will help defend any litigation in court with respect to enforcement.
Any questions or comments? Deputy Warden, your microphone's on. It's now off. So is someone willing to make a motion to forward this to regular council for approval? Moved by Councillor Patty Durkee. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 9.4, draft repeal of the municipality emergency management bylaw R-842-22.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So approximately 4 years ago, the municipality adopted a new procedure when doing its bylaw work, that at the end of bylaw where revisions were made, we would put in the phrase, "This repeals and replaces the previously numbered bylaw on the same issue." When we adopted our new regional emergency management bylaw, that phraseology was not in there. So now, this sounds complicated, but it really isn't. We need a bylaw to repeal the old emergency management bylaw. So you will be approving a bylaw that will be repealing a bylaw which contradicts with your new approach to REMO. Sorry.
I'm wondering if you could repeat that, but I'm not going to ask. Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, okay, because this is a bylaw, does this mean it has to go through first reading?
First and second, yes.
Yes, okay. So I will make the motion that we forward this to regular council for first reading.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Still got my head wrapped around getting the CAO to repeat what she said again, but.
Please don't.
All right, moving on. Item 9.5, draft solid waste. I can't speak all of a sudden. Item 9.5, draft solid waste resource collection and disposal bylaw S-088-22.
So, Mr. Chair, this is before council. We are in the last stages of preparing to go live with our reverse onus program. And so we've been working with WasteCheck and our legal advisor on making sure that we've got all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. So we'll be unrolling an educational campaign in January for a go-live date of April 1st of issuing the SAW tickets. So we asked the solicitor to just take one more look at the bylaw and make sure that it had the best chance possible with respect to defending a charge in court. So on page 9, under Part 4, evidentiary burden, the solicitor is recommending that we use the words solid waste or waste interchangeably, and so we include them both because they're both terms that are defined separately in the definition section. He saw that as an opportunity possibly for a loophole if we had to go to court and defend the charges. So it will be first and second reading. This is a material change because you're broadening the scope of what's included there. So I'm recommending to council that you approve first reading of this bylaw.
To be moved to
Recommend
regular
council,
council for
yeah.
approval, correct? So motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Is there any discussion on that motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, item 9.6, the addition to the agenda, and this is in regards to a presentation that we could not receive from C&D Community Design due to sickness. What we're looking for is another meeting date. Madam CAO, you do have some information on that?
Yes, so I checked with the consultants and they can make themselves available for a virtual meeting to present to council and receive direction from council on next Wednesday evening at 5:30.
And that meeting is either, is it virtually or is it in person?
It can happen virtually, but if council would prefer to be in person, then it's your prerogative. November 16th, Councillor Cushing.
So is someone willing to make a motion in that regards, or Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we conduct that meeting, that we conduct it online.
Okay, so you're making a motion that the boundary review meeting will be held online November 16th at 5:30?
And
Does that have to be specified as a special council meeting before I ask for a second?
That was
reading?
my question, Mr. Chair. It can be a committee of the whole meeting with a recommendation to go to council the following week, or it can be a council meeting. It's your prerogative.
So what do you wish, Deputy Warden?
I think it should be committee of the whole, and then we can have a final decision here at council, and that would give another opportunity
Yeah.
to hear an potential motion coming out of the committee of the whole.
So it's going to be a special committee of the whole meeting on November the 16th
5:30.
at 5:30. So the motion on the floor, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Discussion, Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll send my regrets now. I can't make one Wednesday night a month is all I can afford to be away from another extracurricular activity. But if we discuss it at council, then I can have my say the next week, but that's fine. Just- It's fine, don't change it for me. Daniel wouldn't have been here if we were having a conversation today,
That is true, because it would be a recommendation coming
To
forward to
council.
regular council,
Yeah.
which would be held in
Yeah. On the
2
23rd.
weeks, on the 25th. Okay? So is there any more discussion on that motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, council. And that is correct. I forgot that. The Councillor Daniel Allen is not here today, so we would have had that same discussion then. All right, moving on to item number 10, correspondence for action. You all have in your package a letter from Warden Penny Smith from the Municipality District of Shelburne requesting that she have the services of our CAO. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
The proper way to do this would probably to make a motion, but I have some questions around this because I'm confused as to why a municipality would be asked, and again, I'm only 2 years in this, and this is the first time I've seen something like this, so maybe some clarification from the chair or the CAO or somebody else around the table as to why another municipality would be asking for our chief administrative officer to assist, one. Two, do we have the resources for that? And three, why is a counselor not being asked to be part of that as well, if it's a regional project? Lots of questions, and I don't know if this is the place to ask them, and if anyone really even has the answers.
Absolutely, this is the place to ask them. That's why we have committee of the whole, and I cannot answer any of them because I only ever remember one request like this, and I think it was in my first term, and I don't remember what the reasoning was back then. Madam CEO, could you answer that?
Sure. So I actually received a request from the CAO of the municipality of the District of Shelburne to attend a meeting with the CAO from Argyle and chat about some initiatives that they have underway with respect to this report, assessing climate change vulnerability of seafood industry-dependent communities in Nova Scotia. So for the CAO for the District of Shelburne, he's a brand-new CAO. And so he's looking to have access to some other CAO resources to help build out the work that he's doing with his municipality. And because it's seafood sector related and it's climate change related, there is a value to the municipality district of Yarmouth. It does fit within our strategic plan to make myself available as a resource to Warren for the work that they're doing. And the reciprocity is that at some point this is going to be a benefit to the tri-counties, and the work is going to hopefully be a sector-wide piece of work.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
So given that fulsome explanation, I mean, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that we approve it. I don't believe a motion needs to be made. It's within the sphere of our activities at Modi, and there's been a good explanation given by the CEO as to how her involvement would benefit both us and the other units, and in this very, very important issue of vulnerability of seafood industry dependent communities in Nova Scotia. So I think maybe consensus from council would be warranted, and we'd have our CAO move forward with the activity.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing is that I would want the approval of our CAO that she is prepared and wants to do this before we make a direction to say she has to do this. So as long as she's willing to be part of this project, then yes.
So Councillor Hurlbert almost asked a question, but she didn't quite get there. So with respect to resource allocation, as I understand it right now, it's a couple of hour conversations 3 or 4 times a year, which I can manage now. If a formal project develops and there's a desire on the part of the District of Shelburne to formally partner with the District of Yarmouth, that's something a bit different, on a different scale and scope, and it will come back to council.
And I'm glad someone touched on that, because my question, CEO, do you anticipate on how long or how much time this could take up? And I'd be a little concerned about that, because you are, after all, the one to look forward for the administration of, in the daily operations of the municipality of District of Yarmouth, and if it became overbearing or too time-consuming, I'd much rather you spend that time with us. But if you feel that you have the time and as it stands right now. So, is there any more discussion on that? Do I have consensus on that? Yeah. Okay. Item 10.1.2, letter from Mr. Frank Sonier, Highway 304, the Grove Road. Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank, I've known him again for many, many years, and he drives down that because his daughter lives down that way, in that area. I've been driving that road for 54 years, and sometimes that's when I have a license, but before that too. But but anyway, you know, and I seen people get killed on that road at different areas. I've seen cars slide off the banks in that area, which we were, on my very first term, we were able to get TIR to put a railing up there, which saved a lot. The road is very narrow. There is a lot of traffic in there, down through there right to Cape Fichu. And from Johns Cove Beach to the lighthouse, it's very, very dangerous. So, and to top it off, the province of Nova Scotia has identified that Highway 304 is a blue route, which means it should have a width of it that is comfortable for people to ride their bikes, walk, jog, whatever. During the summertime, we have many bike events, races that happen down through there and back. We have people during the summertime who ride their bikes there and back. We have a professional who lives down in that area. He rides his bike to work every day and back, unless it's a big snowstorm, but other than that, even in the rain, he's riding there. So it's a very important section of highway that's being neglected, and that highway takes it to one of our main attractions of the Cape Fichu Lighthouse. And it seems to me we have to somehow acknowledge that it is dangerous and it's an accident waiting to happen there again. And I think we got to let the province know that this is a very serious problem on a highway which they have identified as a blue route, and they're not doing much about it. He also mentions about the bushes and whatnot. There's areas there that if somebody is walking one way or the other, and vehicles, they're supposed to drive the speed limit, but they often don't. You know, there's a couple of corners there that definitely an accident is waiting to happen there. So I'd like to see this letter being forwarded to TIR to just to impress upon them about the importance of providing a better width of the highway to meet some standard of the blue route, and for the safety of the citizens, of the heavy traffic volume, to the fishing industry that goes through there. I do know that twice a week in the morning from the Johns Cove Beach to the lighthouse, there's a garbage truck and a school bus that pass there twice a week. And it's a very narrow, it's only a matter of time something's going to happen there. So there's different sections along that 304 highway that definitely need some attention, and we've got to express it strong. We've got to have express it strongly to the TIR that something has to be done to this route. That's my opinion. Thank you.
All right, any more discussion on this letter from Mr. Frank Sonier? I will add to what Councillor Lauren Cushion said is, you are absolutely right that it is a blue route, and this road's been neglected from one end to the other as long as as long as I've heard. And actually, I've also talked to Mr. Sonier, and he said for me to take a ride up there. Well, I ride up there at least a couple times a month, and he's absolutely right. So I guess from what you said, Councillor Cushing, in that regards, I think it would be appropriate to this is my own personal opinion, I think it would be appropriate to forward the concerns that you had mentioned about this being a blue route and about the bushes and the regular upkeep of this road be forwarded to the area supervisor, Department of Transportation. Also included in that would be to the Minister, Kim Masland. So it's up to you what you want to do with this, because absolutely it would have to be made. Could you turn on your microphone, please, so people can hear?
Thank you. I'd certainly like to make a motion that this letter be sent off with our, for consideration, and acknowledge that they recognize this area as a hazard to pedestrians in traffic, in commercial traffic.
All right, so a motion on the floor to recommend to regular council what you just outlined to the area supervisor of Public Works and the minister?
Correct.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on, item 10.1.3, letter from the DMAH, repayment of invoices by RCEs. And I do have to ask the CAO, what is an RCE?
Regional Centers for Education.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had advised council a while back that a change had been made to the Education Act, which opened up the ability for regional centers for education to be viewed in the same light as other provincial properties with respect to municipal taxation. Some regional centers for education have some supervisors who, in some cases, are refusing to pay utility bills and area rates to municipalities as a result of the change to the Education Act. And I understand, and I briefed council at the time, that it was recognized by the Department of Municipal Affairs that that was not intended to have happened in the changes to the Education Act, and that staff at the province were working on finding a resolution. So this letter in your package today is confirmation from the Deputy Minister of both the Education and Municipal Affairs and Housing that the payments will be made. My concern is a very small part of the letter, which reads, new invoices for municipalities and village will continue to be paid, comma, as appropriate. So my concern is with the comma, as appropriate. We understand that property owned by His Majesty, I almost said something different, His Majesty, is not taxable, and so we receive a grant in lieu. But we also understand that things like water bills, area rates for fire, if we happen to area rate streetlights or sidewalks, that they would be due. And so my recommendation to council is that we write back and just ask for clarification on what is meant by as appropriate.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to declare conflict for the conversation decision.
Okay, so can you please note that in the minutes? Jenny? So what is the wishes of council? You wish to move?
I'll make that motion
All right, motion made by,
to move to regular council.
motion made by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert to move to regular council. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion carried unanimously. This is a note to the recording secretary. Deputy Warden was indicated that he left the table, correct? Okay. All right, item 10.1.4, information on Bill 212, an act to amend Public Utility Act. You all have that in your package. I received that here a few days ago from the CEO of Nova Scotia Power. I will make a comment about this. When it comes to what is currently on the floor of the Legislative Assembly of Nova Scotia and having a CEO asking us to express our concerns about that, this is something that I'd much rather, since number one, we have no input in this regards to bills that are put forward on the legislature floor, I'd be real leery about putting forward any comments or questions. And if we were to do anything, I would just, I would only entertain a motion personally to just writing a letter to Mr. Gregg thanking him for his email and leave it at that, because they're starting to tread on an area that I really don't want to get into. That's my own personal opinion. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, I think that's a sage piece of advice. I think certainly, you know, Mr. Gregg's taken the time to send a letter and inform us about the matter, and which is good. It's always good to know more than less, and happy that the letter was sent to us. But I would agree with your view that probably the best thing is to simply send a letter of thanks for the information he's provided to us and leave it at that. So having said that, I'll make a motion that we forward this to regular council with the understanding that we'll write a letter at that point, or sanction the writing of a letter at that point, just simply thanking him for his correspondence.
Hey, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.2, you have 3 pieces of correspondence for information from the Community Foundation funding for the Tri-County area. Response to the letter from Minister Maslin re ferry service, and Yasta News released in regards to a tourism award finalist, which is awesome news. You have that in your package. Is there any comments regarding that? Hearing none. Item number 11, in camera. We have one in camera agenda item. I need a motion to go into camera. Moved by Councillor Lauren Cushion, seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert to go into camera. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.